I'm Scott at Woodlake Nature Center, and today I'm going to show you how to put together a backyard compost. Composting is a great thing to do where you can take your grass clippings and your leaves and even your fruit and vegetable waste from your kitchen and turn it into wonderful soil. Now, it's not a fertilizer, it's an amendment, but you're basically using nature's waste management team, the same one that's out in the forest, decomposing all the sticks and leaves and dead material, turning it into soil. You can do that right in your own backyard. So you can see I've got a structure. This is a two-bin compost system that we have here. We're looking at one of the bins, and I've been layering the compost. So when you put your material in, you start with all the brown material. So I've got all these brown dead leaves. You sprinkle them in a layer, typically about 6 inches deep. I'm going to be kind of quick here. And we're going to layer the compost like a cake.
Wait, did someone say cake?
I did. Hi, Sierra. How are you?
Hi, Scott. I'm doing all right.
You having a good summer?
Well, so far, it's pretty warm.
It is warm.
And kind of wet.
Kind of wet, too. Perfect for composting.
Perfect.
I'm putting together...
I heard cake.
What
does that have to do with composting?
Well, when we put together a compost, it's kind of like a cake. We take brown leaves and spread them out, and then we're going to layer some green material with it, and then we're going to put icing on it.
I love icing, Scott.
I do too, Sierra, but we're not going to eat this one.
We can't eat this?
No, because the icing actually is soil that has microorganisms in it. Worms, springtails.
I don't want to eat worms.
Tiny little microbes that are going to actually eat all of our dead leaves and grass clippings and turn it into soil.
That sounds like a terrible cake, Scott.
It's actually a very good cake for trees and bushes and flowers.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's
it's nature's cake.
It is. It's all part of decomposition.
Decomposition.
Correct.
That's a really big word, Scott.
I know. Scientists sometimes use big words, but decompose is kind of the opposite of composing. When you compose a story or a letter or even a piece of music, you're putting things together. Yeah, well, decompose, you're taking things apart.
So we're making a cake for it to fall apart.
For it to fall apart into soil. Absolutely right.
Wait, soil? This looks like a bunch of leaves.
Well, that's what it is right now. It's a bunch of leaves. And next, if you have a lot of brown material, it's lacking nitrogen. Nitrogen is necessary for the microorganisms to do their job of decomposing. So this wouldn't be very tasty to them. It's very hard. So
I don't blame them. It looks pretty gross.
To make it a little bit more tender and to give the microorganisms bigger teeth, I'm going to be putting some blood meal in there. Now, blood meal? Yeah, you can buy it at any garden store. It's actually dried cow and pig blood from the stockyard.
This is actual blood?
It's actual blood, but you can see it's very dry. It looks kind of like dirt.
Someone dried a bunch of blood? Somebody
dried a bunch of blood.
No, we don't have vampires, right?
No vampires, not up here.
Okay.
But they, the blood actually provides nitrogen. Sorry, did I get that in your hair?
I'll just flip it, it's fine.
So about 1 cup of blood meal per layer of brown material should give the little organisms their teeth. Now, another way we give them teeth is by adding green material.
What do you mean give them teeth?
It actually allows them to chew harder and faster to decompose the leaves.
So these microbes have teeth?
They kind of do, yeah. And they're very small teeth, however, so it energizes.
So like my baby teeth?
Kind of like your baby teeth.
Got it.
Yes. And this green matter has nitrogen in it already. So we don't have to add any more blood meal to that.
Do I get nitrogen if I eat green stuff?
You do. And
do I need nitrogen?
You need nitrogen and lots of other vitamins and minerals. Yes.
Okay.
So eat your green leafy vegetables. Yes.
Okay.
But this isn't spinach. This is actually a weed called burdock that I pulled out. But what we're going to do is layer the green matter on top of the brown matter.
Oh, so this is one of the layers.
This is another layer.
Layer of cake. Got it.
Exactly.
How big are we making this cake?
We're making it about 6 inches deep each layer.
Okay.
Yeah, so first I would put 6 inches of brown leaves, then 6 inches of green grass clippings, or if these happen to be a bunch of weeds that I pulled out of the yard.
There's some pretty flowers on there.
Yeah, it's actually creeping Charlie or ground ivy. I don't like it when it gets into my garden, but it is a wonderful ground cover in the
pretty
forest. Cool. And now I'm going to
that looks like 6 inches.
Add some of, almost, yep. And I'm going to add some of my fruit and vegetable waste. I keep this bin under my kitchen sink. And then I can put old celery in there, or carrots, or even tea bags.
My mom loves tea.
Yeah, and even orange peels. So I can put all of my fruit and vegetable waste in here too.
So you can do this at home?
You can, right in your backyard.
Not just at Wood Lake?
No, you can make one of these in your backyard, put it towards the back of the yard, maybe in a shady location, and then you can make all this stuff work for you. Turn all of your grass clippings and leaves into soil that you can use in your garden.
Ooh, that sounds really tasty.
It is. Now we have to actually add the frosting.
I love frosting. Frosting is delicious. Do you ever eat it out of the cake, out of the can?
Yeah, sometimes I do. It is tasty. But this frosting...
That looks really gross frosting, Scott.
It is. It's just dirt, Sierra. It's the finished compost from last year. Or you could even dig some garden soil. And I'm just going to layer a little bit of garden soil, because remember who's living in there?
You said microbes.
Microbes, tiny organisms, and even maybe some worms. And
worms, I love worms.
Yeah, there could be worms in there. So I'm going to layer a couple of shovelfuls.
Wait, I think I saw a worm.
Of soil. Oh, there could be a worm in there. Yeah, and worms are great to have in the compost.
Wow.
And the last thing...
So wait. The frosting looks like dirt.
It does look like dirt. And it's got
It doesn't look like dead leaves.
It doesn't anymore. And that's what all of this stuff is going to turn into.
Turns into dirt?
It's all going to turn into dirt. Yep.
Whoa.
So that's our mission. But remember, the microorganisms, they're kind of like pets. Now we've given them all the food they need, but what else do pets need besides food?
Well, when I had a cat, we would make sure I have food and water and a place to go to the bathroom.
Perfect. And we need water. So we're going to put a little bit of water in each layer too. After we apply the dirt with the microorganisms, then we're going to sprinkle a little bit of water. Not too much. Just to give the microorganisms a little drink. We don't want it soggy wet, or it could start to mold and have smell.
That wouldn't be good.
But we want it about as wet as a damp sponge. So they have enough to keep nice and moist. And now with all that stuff moist, that's one whole layer. Now we're going to start another layer. So we go back to our brown again. And then more green.
And then we frost it.
And then we frost it with some dirt.
So good. I love... Oh, whoa.
Oh, sorry. And then add a little more water.
You make some weird cakes, Scott.
And it will be awesome. So that's our compost cake, Sierra.
It's a really good... It looks like a cool cake. I wouldn't eat it, though.
You wouldn't? No, it's not ready to eat yet, because what we'll do is when this all turns to soil, which will take 4 to 5 months probably.
Cakes usually take an hour, Scott.
Yeah, this one's in a very, very slow oven.
Okay.
So we're going to have a hole kind of in the middle right there so that air can get in. We can feel it get nice and warm. And then once a month, so 30 days from now, I'm going to take my shovel or a pitchfork and I'm going to turn this whole pile upside down. We're going to make upside down cake.
I love upside down cake.
So do I, but I like mine with
That seems like a lot of work, though.
Pineapple. Well, it's really not that bad. And when we turn it, we can add more to this. But if you're adding your food waste, then you should always bury it under some of the other so it doesn't attract rodents. But then we'll turn the whole
Like
thing
mice?
so the top, yeah, like mice, squirrels, raccoons. We're going to actually turn this over so the top stuff is on the bottom stuff is on the top.
Okay.
And we do that once a month until it's all soil. Then we can spread it in the garden and grow the really good food.
That sounds delicious. But
Yeah.
can you do this in the wintertime?
No, you can only do this in the spring, summer, and fall. Because,
So can you compost in the winter?
well, I'm glad you asked, because this will go to sleep when everything gets really cold.
Okay.
Yeah, so all the water will freeze.
Hibernates.
Kind of hibernates for the winter, yeah. And we can actually compost indoors using worms. It's called vermicomposting.
I love worms.
Would you like to see how that works?
I would love to see that, Scott.
All right, we're going to see how a vermicomposting system works next. So this is a worm compost, also called vermicomposting. And what I've done is just taken a plastic tub that you can buy at any hardware store or Menards, Home
Scott,
Depot.
it has a lot of holes in it.
It does have holes because the worms need air to breathe. So I've drilled some holes in the top, in the sides, and even a few in the bottom. I put screen over them so nothing can fall out. And then this will actually hold enough waste for a family of 4 to 6 people.
Whoa!
Can put their weekly kitchen waste in here. So this is a way you can compost year-round in your home. Probably have it in your basement. I've got a friend though who actually has one in their living room. If you do it properly, yep, there's no smell. The worms eat everything so quickly, it never smells. So you do need to maintain it. And to start out, we start with some fresh newspaper.
I was a little worried because you were putting some food waste in there, so I was worried that it would smell.
Yeah.
Because I know my garbage smells sometimes.
Yep, exactly right. But because the worms are healthy and there's lots of them, they consume the food waste very quickly in just a few days. So we're going to start out our compost by shredding for this size of container, which you can see is 3 feet by 1.5 feet.
Pretty big.
Yeah. We're going to shred newspaper in strips, about 1 inch. And paper has a grain, so if you shred from the top of the newspaper down, you get these nice 1-inch strips. And
Where do you get your newspaper?
What's that?
Where do you get newspaper?
Oh, well, it used to get delivered to your door every day, but now you can still have it delivered. You can get the newspaper delivered to your house. A lot of people do it for weekends because they like to read the newspaper on the weekend.
There's like comic strips and stuff, right?
Exactly. And so this is another way to recycle your newspaper.
Recycling's pretty good.
Recycling is really important. So
what about my old homework? Can my old homework go in here?
Actually, you could use that kind of paper too. Absolutely. You could shred it into strips, put it in here. Any kind of paper will really work. But newspaper, there's a lot of that. I've got 3 pounds of newspaper shred in here. That's what you need to start a bin like this.
That's a lot of newspaper, Scott.
It's a lot of newspaper. And what the newspaper does is it holds moisture for the worms because they have to drink water. And if you're not putting enough food waste in, the worms will consume the newspaper too. Newspaper is made from trees. It's wood fiber, and the worms can eat that as well.
Cool.
So to 3 pounds of newspaper, I have to add 9 pounds of water. That's
a lot of water, Scott.
8 pounds to a gallon. So I'm putting just a little over a gallon in here with this paper. That's going to make it 75% moisture.
Whoa.
So you need 3 times as much water as paper by weight. And we mix that in really good. We're going to swish it around.
Swish, swish, swish.
Swish, swish, swish. We want it equally moist.
That's a fun word, Scott.
Moist?
Uh-huh.
I like moist. It should feel about as wet as a damp sponge, Sierra.
So just like the outdoor composting.
Kind of like the outdoor composting, exactly. Do you remember seeing worms in the outdoor compost?
I did see some worms. I saw some other bugs too.
Yeah,
there were some roly-polies.
There's roly-polies, there could be centipedes, springtails. There's a whole ecosystem in the compost.
That's really cool.
But that's good for outdoor, but you don't want all those creatures indoors.
I don't want centipedes in my house, Scott.
No, we're just going to
They have a lot of legs. It freaks me out.
Just the worms will live in this one.
Okay, they don't have legs. That's better.
They don't have legs, and they don't crawl around everywhere. And
They're
the worms
slow.
will stay in the bin where their food is. So now we're going to take all this wet newspaper, and we're going to sprinkle it in here.
Whoa.
There we go.
It's a lot of newspaper, Scott.
It's a lot of newspaper. It should fill the bin about 2/3 full.
I think you're almost there.
We're going to mix it in with the other newspaper that was already in there because we started
So kind of like turning it over, like the outside one?
Kind of like turning it over, yeah. We're going to mix it all together.
Does this hurt the worms?
It doesn't. It doesn't really hurt the worms.
So your claws don't hurt the worms?
Nope. It's pretty soft in there, and the worms are pretty tough. So we're
I never thought the worms were tough.
Well, not as tough as you or me, but they are fairly tough for such small creatures.
That's pretty cool.
And with all this new newspaper, worms don't have teeth.
What?
They have a gizzard. Kind of like a bird.
What's a gizzard?
A gizzard is a muscle in their throat. So instead of teeth, they eat the soil, which has little rocks in it.
Okay.
And the little rocks, which is sand, actually is their teeth. It grinds up the food that they eat.
So they use rocks for teeth because they don't have teeth.
Correct.
Why don't they just grow teeth?
They can't grow teeth. They're soft-bodied animals. No teeth. So then we just add about 2 cups of soil, which is going to give the worms the grit they need for their gizzard so they can eat the newspaper and the food that we put in.
It looks like the frosting that we put on the outside compost.
It is. It's kind of the same thing. This is just the grit, though, that the worms are going to need. Then you can add worms.
Okay.
So now we're ready to add our worms.
That's exciting. I love worms.
Yeah, worms are great. And these aren't just...
Did you get these from outside?
I didn't, actually. The worms that live in your garden are probably earthworms or night crawlers, and these need to be red wigglers or red worms. And you can buy them at the bait store. They're called Big Reds. That's kind of an expensive way to do it, but if you start out with just a few hundred worms, they'll actually have their own babies in here. And I started this 20 years ago, and it's the 20th generation. They just keep having babies. You'll never find a dead worm either, Sierra, because if a worm dies, they eat the dead worms too. So these are small red wigglers. You can see they're kind of small.
Can I pet it?
You can pet it. Oh, it's kind of soft, a little
really
slimy.
soft. It's kind of slimy.
Yeah. And they eat fresh food. These are also called manure worms. If you go to a farm field and kick over a manure pile, there'll be red wigglers under the manure eating that up.
Well, why can't you use the worms you find outside?
Because the worms outside, they eat dead material like dead leaves and the leaf mold that grows on them. They don't eat fresh vegetation. So, yeah. So these are a special worm that will eat the fresh vegetation.
It's good to know.
I actually put 1,000 worms in here to start out. That's good. Or you can put several hundred. If you can't find them at the bait store or don't want to be that expensive, you can actually contact a worm grower.
There are people who grow worms?
There are, and they're all over the country. So just Google worm farms for red wigglers, and you'll find a worm grower that'll sell you 1,000 bed-run worms for maybe $20 or $25.
Whoa!
Yeah, and that's what you can start with. So now that we have the worms, we've got the newspaper, we've got the soil that's giving them their grit. All we have to do now is add our fruit and vegetable waste.
Oh, good.
If you don't want,
You eat a lot of celery, Scott.
Yeah, I eat a lot of celery. I've got some sugar snap peas here that went bad in the fridge. So just add it and bury it. The worms don't like to sit on top. They like it to be buried in there.
I always have to dig for worms.
Yeah, we have to dig for worms. They like to be underneath. So you should always bury the food underneath the newspaper.
And it won't smell, right?
It won't smell. I keep this container under my sink, and each week, I've got coffee grounds, I've got some Brussels sprouts, some lots of green vegetables. I kind of try not to put banana peels and apples in the summertime because that can attract fruit flies. So
I don't like flies.
Try to keep all that stuff in my outdoor compost. But worms love coffee grounds and tea bags. And if we bury it in here, I guarantee there won't be any smell. The worms will eat that up in just a few days. So you can add more food every week to your compost. And the worms will just eat it up, and you'll see the newspaper start to go down too.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So what does it look like when it's all done?
We'll find out next.
Okay, Scott.
Through the magic of technology, we're going to let this go, and in time lapse, we're going to pretend 3 to 4 months goes by, and then we'll see how we can get out the worm castings, and then we'll use that in our garden.
Okay. I'll see you in 3 to 4 months then, Scott.
All right. We'll see you, Sierra.
Bye, Scott.
Goodbye. So after 3 or 4 months, your worm compost will look like this. You can see most of the newspaper has been eaten. There's all this brown worm castings, and most all the food has been eaten as well. So
it's very brown, Scott.
That's right, Sierra. It's very brown, and that is soil. It's actually better than soil because when the worms poop out the castings, there's actually vitamins and minerals in it, so it is a fertilizer. Remember the compost cake outside just makes a soil amendment, but this is actually a fertilizer.
So I can put this on my plants.
You can. You don't want to put all the paper and worms on your plants, so we're going to use these garden claws, and I'm going to put it onto a screen.
You look like a dinosaur.
Kind of like a dinosaur, and I'm going to sift out all the worm castings so that I can put just those out on the plants, and I'll put all the newspaper and worms back into my compost bin.
So there are worms in there?
There are worms in here. We'll see. There's one right there. And Sierra, who put some banana labels in there? Those are made out of plastic. Can worms eat plastic?
I don't know. I don't think so.
No, so those belong in the garbage. But there's our nice little worm. And then I have a 1/4-inch hardware cloth screen that I just move around, and the castings fall through, and look at all the big worms in there.
Whoa!
These are the nice little red worms, have done their job, eating most of the newspaper and all of our food waste. I don't see any food waste hardly at all. And
I guess people haven't been here all that much, huh, Scott?
That's true, Sierra. We've not been around as much as we should. And there's some more garbage that they won't eat. They can't eat plastic.
I'm glad you found it then.
Yeah.
It'd be bad if they tried to eat it. It's like when you try to munch on your hair.
That's not a good thing either, is it?
Well, I mean, you munch on it, and then it gets in your mouth, and you're just like, ah.
Oh, that's not good. We pour the worms and the newspaper back in, and any food waste that might be left. So what we're left with is this really beautiful worm castings that is super rich soil.
That looks like really good soil, like you get at the garden store.
It is. It's actually a fertilizer, so you have to be careful. If you put it on your house plants, don't add more than 1/3 of this to your pot, or it'll actually burn the roots of your plants.
Oh.
So mix it in your garden outside, around trees and shrubs, in house plants. It's really super rich soil that you can make in your house year-round. That's how vermicomposting works. And thank you for joining us for our compost program this week.
Bye, Scott.
Bye, Sierra.